Now welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll, followed by me reading and responding to some comments left on it that asked how you're feeling right now about the Knights of the Old Republic Remake. And to waste no time, let's get right to the results. Where we'll see that 18% of voters said they're super excited and have little or no doubt that this will be great. 50% or half of all voters said they're cautiously optimistic right now. 15% were then undecided or neutral or just didn't care much either way, while 13% said they had a bad feeling about this, and a final 4% felt that this is going to be an absolute disaster. And if I were to vote in this poll, I would put myself with the majority. I'd put myself in there with the cautiously optimistic crowd, though I really would want to be up there with the super excited who have no doubts, which is maybe where I initially was, but a few things have come to light that have maybe tempered my excitement a bit, and has done the same to others, considering almost all the comments talked about some of their fears they have concerning this remake. And before we get to some of your comments, let me once again just say thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches any of my videos, as well as a big thank you to everyone who supports this channel over on Patreon. And now let's kick this off, as usual, with the top-rated comment, which this time came to us from Tucker's Baby, who said, "Not exactly optimistic about bringing the story to a modern audience when Sam Meigs is the one writing for the game." In a close second then, we also had this comment from Strike Flyer Aquamos, who said, "I'm cautiously optimistic about this, mainly because of that rumor that Sam Meigs, the writer for Battlefront 2 EA, is writing the story. That immediately set off some red flags for me and makes me extremely cautious." Okay, so for better or worse, a lot of comments were very similar to these two. They brought up Sam Meigs, who has apparently been hired as a writer for this project, which before we even talk about her, and we will in a bit, it leads to the question of what exactly do they need writers for on this? The story is already written, and sure, maybe you want to go back and tweak some dialogue here and there, or add some new quests or side quests or something along those lines, which is all fine. But the story itself does not need to be changed at all. The fact that so many love the original version of the game and are excited about this remake, or were excited, especially when the gameplay itself, let's be honest, wasn't the greatest even back then, it should tell you that the story is what made the game great in the first place. So why would you change that? And why do it or use the excuse that you're doing it to bring it to a modern audience? I mean, what are you even saying? What is it about this 18-year-old game that doesn't work anymore today? And look, if what they mean by this is they want to upgrade the graphics and gameplay to meet the standards of a modern audience, well, that's one thing, and I can understand that. I'm fine with that. But if they think the story needs to be changed to fit modern audiences, and probably for the sake of diversity or something along those lines, well, let me now read this comment from Thaddeus Montgomery, and I don't know if this is supposed to be sarcastic or not. I think it is, but you just never know these days. Anyway, he had this to say. "I think it could be great, and if they put more diversity into the story, it would be even better. Representation is cool." And again, I'm not sure if that comment was meant to be sarcastic or not. Either way, diversity, representation, yeah, they can all be great things. But Knights of the Old Republic already might be the best all-around showcase of diversity in Star Wars, though ironically enough, I doubt that was ever the intent of the original creators, or that they gave it any real thought while making the game, other than maybe going out of their way to showcase the diversity of species, since we see many different aliens in the game, which is awesome. And maybe the best part about this being a sort of diversity masterpiece is that it happened long before the sequel trilogy was supposedly breaking all sorts of ground in this department, even though if they'd bothered to do even a cursory glance at the franchise, they would have seen diversity was already long since there, especially when it comes to strong female characters, and this ridiculous belief by some that Rey was the very first one, when she was anything but. I mean, even just in KOTOR, we have several, with Bastila Shan being one of the strongest characters in the entire game. We also have Mission, who is a feisty, strong-willed, independent young woman who takes no crap from anybody, mainly because she has a Wookiee on her side. Though there's also Juhani, who is quite the story of strength and perseverance herself. All three were strong female characters long before Rey, and not a one has ever been complained about by any Star Wars fans. Now, why is that, despite what you would hear nowadays from some that, we don't want women in Star Wars? Well, it's because they're great characters, plain and simple, and that was clearly the top priority with them, to make great characters, not to make a point about strong women. and hence Star Wars fans warmly embrace them, and they've embraced other great female characters before and since. Which brings us back to Sam Meigs, who, from what I can tell just glancing at her Twitter and from what I've been told by multiple people at this point, is she very much believes that she is smashing the patriarchy with her work of writing comic books and video games. She's another one of those individuals who wants to see herself as a pioneer by doing what has been done before by others, but by being louder while doing it. And look, I don't think everything in the world is fair. It never will be. Nor do I think women are always treated great within geekdom, or whatever you would like to call it. I've talked before about my wife, who loves many of the same things I'm into, and grew up loving them as well, and was, at times, harassed for what she enjoyed when she was young, though it was almost always by other girls and not boys. And so yeah, I do understand and empathize with any young woman out there or girl who wants to get more into these things and finds some sort of barrier in their way. Not that there's not going to be barriers in anything you want to do in life. And so I do want to see geekdom be more inviting to women all around, and I am fine with more female characters if that helps make that happen. But, and my wife will be the first one to tell you this, she hates the pandering. She's tired of seeing idealized female characters everywhere, taking the places of once good, well-written, relatable characters. Anyway, my long-winded point is nothing needs to be changed about the female characters in KOTOR or about the story. Nothing. It is already a showcase of diversity and of genuine, strong female characters that are well-written. And if Sam Meigs has been brought in to rewrite them or polish them for a modern audience, which unfortunately usually means making idealized characters to be symbols of perfection, which I thought was a problem, especially for young women, that they were always bombarded with what they are told is an ideal woman or what an ideal woman should be, well then maybe we do have a disaster on our hands here, but hopefully not. And yes, she is working on the game. I saw some questioning this, but she did indeed tweet out that she is part of the team over at Aspyr. Though, one closing note here is that Ryan Treadwell, the lead designer on the game, said that we're rebuilding it from the ground up with the latest tech to match the groundbreaking standard of innovation established by the original, all while staying true to its revered story. Which makes it seem like, or at least they claim, that they want to keep the story intact and that the changes will have to do with the graphics and gameplay. And if that's the case, this is a pretty good sign that we should have some hope here. Alright, and moving on now, we have this comment from Nodo Zakadarzi, who said, if they don't change the storyline, I don't know how they could fail this project. Like, you have to try real hard for this to flop. Then there's also this one from Star Wars News and Memes, who said, it's either going to be the best Star Wars game in years or the worst. There is no in-between. And I do have to agree with that, mainly because if it doesn't live up to and exceed the original in many ways, and yes, it has to exceed, or what's the point of the remake, then it will be a failure, a complete failure in my eyes. And I know that sounds harsh, but as a lot of people pointed out, we already have the original version of the game that I can play anytime I want. So there needs to be a reason why I'm going to drop $70 on a new version, and it better because it is indeed a superior version in many ways, if not almost all ways, and in all respects to the original. Next up then we have this comment from Smintilli, who said, as someone who follows music fanatically, I'd like to quote Mike Love of the Beach Boys, even though he is a tremendous teabag from what I hear, but his words seem pertinent here, who once said to Brian Wilson, don't mess with the formula. So I hope they leave the core gameplay as is with some quality of life improvements here and there. I think the D&D-like gameplay still works today if done right. Please don't turn it into an action RPG. And this is where the big question is, isn't it? Because I think we can all agree we don't want to see the story changed at all. I don't think there's a debate there. Same goes for the graphics, but the other way, I think we can all agree they need to be updated, or again, what is the point of remaking this? But anyway, the big question has to be, what will they do with the gameplay? Is it going to be changed? Is it still going to be turn-based? Will it be action RPG oriented? Will it still use the old D20 system from D&D? And by the fact that they are talking about building this from the ground up, well, to me that says that both of those are going to change, both the system and the gameplay itself, which I'm not saying is what I necessarily want to see. I just think that it's going to be the case. I think, and maybe hope, that's what they mean when they are talking about bringing it to modern audiences. Again, they're not talking about bringing the story, they're talking about just bringing the game and its core mechanics to a generation who was used to something far more advanced than that original game. Alright, let's now move on to this one from Veterit Torf, who said, I hope they bring all the original voice actors back. And well, we know Jennifer Hale, the voice of Bastila, is already back. And I do recall them saying in one of their interviews that they're bringing back as many original voice actors as they can for this, but unfortunately not all of them can come back. I believe some of them have passed away, which also makes me hope that the only reason writers are being brought in on this is to tweak some of the dialogue, not make major changes to the story. Alright, and enough of my rambling for now. Let's get to just a few final comments before wrapping it up. Starting with this one from Taeyon R. Ransom, who said, where is the excited to play it for the first time because I didn't when it first came out, but blowing it's a PS5 exclusive option, lol. Alright, then we also have this one from Matthew Ashbrook, who said, cautiously optimistic, update the graphics, update the gameplay mechanics, expand the maps, expand the story, but don't change it. Leave the characters alone and don't change the score, and don't release it in chapters like Final Fantasy VII-R. Then there's also this one from Matt D, who said, I've got a bad feeling about this. I love KOTOR, it was the first game that really got me into RPGs and more story-driven games in general, but over the past few years I've been burned by both Star Wars and video gaming in general, too much to actually have an optimistic outlook on this remake. I would love to be wrong and have this remake blow everyone away, but I can't realistically hope for that in this world. Then there's this one from Ken Benobi, who said, either a worthy update to a timeless classic or a cash grab that tarnishes the legacy of the original. Also got this comment here from Jonas Diaz, who said, as someone who didn't grow up playing KOTOR, I want to see the trailer first before I make my first impressions, to be honest. Next up, we have a comment from Darth Malik himself, who said, we can't have fear of this failing. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Then this comment from Bulbasaurus, who said, on the off chance that the end result is a massive dumpster fire, at least there is still the original. And finally, we have this comment from Randaches, who said, cautiously optimistic. My biggest concern is that SJW lady that they hired. There is absolutely no reason to change the story for making it more inclusive. The original KOTOR was already full of NPCs of diverse ethnicities, alien species, and gender, and dealt with topics like racism and slavery, but in an elegant way, enriching the story and the world building. It didn't feel forced like in the Disney trilogy. Aside that, I just hope that they will not cut anything from the original, especially some side quests and dark side choices. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me how you're feeling about the Knights of the Old Republic Remake, or what you think about what I or anyone else had to say about it in this video. So do leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.